Chosen ones. Today you'll discover why your mere presence makes entire rooms of people question everything they thought they knew. You are the needle that pops 1,000 balloons of false confidence at once. You walked into that space carrying something they couldn't identify. Not arrogance, not superiority, pure authenticity wrapped in unshakable conviction. Your energy alone started dismantling their carefully constructed personas before you even opened your mouth. They felt it immediately, the shift, the tremor in their fake foundation. Every insecure person in that room suddenly felt exposed, like children playing dress-up who just heard adult footsteps approaching. This is divine justice manifesting through your awakened consciousness. The universe uses chosen ones as mirrors to reflect back the lies people tell themselves. You didn't plan it, you didn't strategize, you simply existed in your truth, and their illusions couldn't survive in the same space. They've spent years building personas designed to fool others and themselves, but authentic power recognizes artificial construction immediately. Your presence became a truth detector they couldn't manipulate or deceive. That soul drumgnetic field around your body, literal electromagnetic field around your body, literal electromagnetic field around your body. Scientific research on heart coherence shows that emotional states create measurable energy signatures that others unconsciously detect. Your years of inner work have calibrated your frequency to truth. Their nervous systems registered this immediately. Like animals sensing an earthquake before it hits, their subconscious minds started screaming warnings that their comfortable illusions were about to be shattered. You've become what ancient traditions called a spiritual catalyst. Your very existence accelerates the evolution of everyone around you. Some evolve forward into greater awareness, others devolve backward into deeper denial, but nobody remains unchanged after encountering authentic power. You're not responsible for their reaction, you're only responsible for maintaining your truth in a world addicted to lies. You observe them with the calm awareness of someone who has walked through their own darkness and emerged transformed. Every fake laugh registered, every manufactured response lit up on your internal radar. You saw through their performance because you've already performed that same desperate dance for acceptance. But you evolved beyond needing their validation. That evolution terrifies them more than any direct attack ever could. Their comfort depends on everyone playing the same game of mutual delusion. When someone stops playing, the entire theater production falls apart. You became the audience member who stood up during the performance and pointed out that the emperor has no clothes. The other audience members weren't angry at the emperor, they were furious at you for ruining their ability to pretend the show was real. Breaking collective hypnosis always triggers defensive rage from those still trapped in the trance. The tension in that room became palpable. You could feel their desperation rising like heat from asphalt. They were scrambling internally, searching for ways to regain control of the narrative. Their minds raced through manipulation tactics they'd used successfully before: guilt trips, emotional blackmail, social pressure, gaslighting. But none of their usual weapons worked against someone who had already conquered their own inner demons. You've developed what psychologists call emotional immunity. Years of facing your own shadow work created antibodies against psychological manipulation. Their attempts to trigger shame, fear, or anger in you felt like trying to infect someone who's already built complete resistance. You watched their desperation with the detached curiosity of a scientist observing predictable chemical reactions. The collective unconscious in that room began fragmenting. Each person's individual mask started cracking under the pressure of your authentic presence. They looked around desperately for allies, for someone else to take the lead in restoring their comfortable group delusion. But everyone was too busy protecting their own fragile ego structure to rescue anyone else's. The social contract that held their fake reality together was dissolving in real time. Your silence became a vacuum that drew all their hidden toxicity to the surface. Without emotional reaction to feed on, their manipulation attempts starved and withered. They found themselves face to face with the emptiness behind their carefully crafted personas. The realization that their entire social identity was built on quicksand began dawning on them simultaneously. Panic set in, not because of what you said, but because of what your presence revealed about their own foundational instability. One sentence. That's all it took to demolish a decade of their carefully constructed self-image. You didn't raise your voice. You didn't gesture dramatically. You simply stated what everyone in that room already knew, but nobody dared acknowledge. Truth spoken with quiet confidence becomes a scalpel that slices through layers of psychological armor they thought were impenetrable. The precision of your observation left no room for deflection or denial. If this message hits your spirit, hype this video so more chosen ones like you can find it. This is how divine warriors operate in the modern battlefield of consciousness. Your weapon isn't violence or manipulation, it's clarity delivered with the force of absolute certainty. You've done the inner work they're still avoiding. You've faced the shadows they're still running from. When you speak from that place of authentic knowing, your words carry the weight of lived experience. They can feel the difference between someone who talks about truth and someone who has been forged by it. The sentence you spoke wasn't rehearsed. It emerged from the depths of your transformed consciousness, like a sword being drawn from stone. Years of meditation, self-reflection, and brutal honesty with yourself had sharpened your ability to see through illusions instantly. What they experienced as a devastating attack was actually just your natural response to encountering mass deception. You couldn't help but speak truth any more than the sun can help but shine. Your words landed with the force of a meteorite hitting Earth. The impact created shockwaves that rippled through every person's psyche simultaneously. Their carefully maintained facade began cracking like glass under pressure. You watched their pupils dilate as their fight-or-flight responses activated. Their bodies knew they were in the presence of something that could destroy everything they'd built their identity upon. The truth you spoke cut through decades of accumulated lies they'd told themselves. Layer after layer of self-deception peeled away like old paint under a power washer. They saw themselves clearly for the first time in years, and the reflection was unbearable. Their whole sense of self was built on avoiding this exact moment of brutal honesty. Your single sentence forced them to confront everything they'd been running from their entire adult lives. The precision of your observation was surgical. You didn't attack them broadly or generally. You identified the exact nerve center of their collective delusion and pressed directly on it. The truth was so specific, so accurate, so undeniably real that they couldn't dismiss it as opinion or perspective. It was fact delivered with the authority of someone who had transcended the very illusions they were still imprisoned by. Watch their faces transform as your words sink in. The confident masks start slipping. The practiced smiles begin twitching. Their pupils dilate as their nervous systems register the threat to their false identities. This isn't conscious, this is primal. Their subconscious minds are screaming alerts that someone just exposed the lie they've been living. The group dynamics that kept them feeling safe suddenly feel dangerous because you've introduced a variable they can't control. You've witnessed this same pattern countless times now. The awakened chosen one enters the space of sleeping souls, and chaos erupts not because of what you do, but because of what you represent. You represent the possibility that everything they believe about themselves might be wrong. You represent the path they're too afraid to walk. You represent the authentic version of themselves they abandoned when they chose comfort over growth. Your existence is a constant reminder of their own spiritual cowardice. The meltdown spread through the room like a virus. One person's ego collapse triggered another's defensive response, which triggered another's panic, which triggered another's rage. You stood in the center of this psychological tornado, completely unmoved. Their chaos couldn't touch you because you'd already survived your own inner storms. You'd been broken down and rebuilt so many times that external turbulence felt like gentle waves compared to the tsunamis you'd weathered internally. Their group identity began fragmenting before your eyes. The invisible threads that held their collective delusion together started snapping one by one. Some people retreated into sullen silence, others became aggressively defensive. A few started unconsciously mimicking your posture, desperate to access some fragment of your unshakable presence, but most just sat there in stunned recognition that they'd been living a lie. Each person's individual breakdown triggered memories and realizations in others. Suppressed doubts they'd buried for years came flooding back to the surface. Questions they'd been afraid to ask themselves suddenly demanded answers. The comfortable numbness they'd cultivated through years of spiritual bypassing was shattered by your unflinching commitment to reality. Their faces went through a predictable sequence of reactions. First shock, as the truth penetrated their defensive barriers. Then anger, as they realized someone had seen through their performance. Then fear, as they understood the implications of being truly seen. Finally, despair, as they grasped how much of their lives had been wasted maintaining an illusion that just crumbled with a single sentence. Suddenly, everyone becomes a philosopher. Everyone discovers their inner Zen master. They start speaking in hushed spiritual tones about peace and understanding. But you can see through their performance because you've evolved beyond their level of deception. Their humility isn't born from genuine wisdom, it's terror wearing a mask of enlightenment. They're hoping their fake spiritual posturing will shame you into backing down and returning to their comfortable level of mutual delusion. True humility comes from strength. Fake humility comes from weakness, disguised as virtue. You can distinguish between them instantly because you've experienced both. When you were still asleep, you used the same tactics they're using now. You recognize the script because you wrote those same lines when you were afraid to stand in your own power. But you outgrew that phase of spiritual cowardice. You learned that real peace comes from authentic confrontation with truth, not from avoiding uncomfortable realities. The fake spiritual emergency in that room reached comedic levels. People who hadn't meditated a day in their lives suddenly started talking about consciousness and vibrations. Individuals who built their careers on manipulation began preaching about authentic communication. The same people who gossiped maliciously about others began speaking about loving kindness. You watched this performance with the amused recognition of someone who had once performed the same desperate theater. Their spiritual bypassing became so obvious it was almost embarrassing. Instead of dealing with the uncomfortable emotions your truth triggered, they tried to levitate above their feelings using borrowed wisdom. They quoted teachers they'd never studied, referenced practices they'd never committed to, and spoke about enlightenment they'd never experienced. Their fake transcendence was actually spiritual materialism dressed up as wisdom, the room filled with pseudo-profound platitudes delivered in carefully modulated voices designed to sound wise and centered. They spoke about higher consciousness while demonstrating complete unconsciousness about their own reactive patterns. They preached about non-attachment while clinging desperately to their crumbling self-images. They lectured about compassion while harboring resentment toward you for exposing their hypocrisy. You recognized every single manipulation tactic because you'd used them all during your own unconscious phase: the victim positioning, the moral superiority, the false concern for your spiritual development, the passive-aggressive suggestions wrapped in loving language, the subtle attempts to make you responsible for their emotional reactions. All of it was transparent to someone who had transcended those levels of spiritual immaturity. Your calm presence becomes their greatest torment. They expected you to react. They expected drama. They expected you to play their game of emotional manipulation. Instead, you simply watched their meltdown with the detached interest of someone studying fascinating but predictable behavior patterns. Your silence gave them space to reveal exactly who they really are beneath their carefully crafted presentations. This is the most devastating weapon in the Chosen One's arsenal, not reaction, but response, not engagement with their chaos, but elevation above their frequency. Your refusal to descend to their level forces them to face their own emptiness. They realize they have no power over someone who doesn't need their approval or fear their disapproval. Your emotional independence terrifies them because they're completely dependent on external validation to maintain their sense of self. You've learned the ancient art of powerful non-engagement. Your ancestors knew this wisdom. They understood that the strongest warriors fight without fighting, win without competing, and conquer through complete stillness. Your silence wasn't passive, it was actively transformative. It created space for truth to emerge naturally, without force or effort. Your presence alone was doing the work that would have required hours of argument and explanation from someone less evolved. The intensity of your observation began revealing layers of their personality they'd successfully hidden from themselves for decades. Your witness consciousness acted like an X-ray machine, exposing the skeletal structure of their psychological defenses. They felt completely naked under your gaze, not because you were judging them, but because you were simply seeing them clearly without the filters of projection or assumption. Your detachment triggered their abandonment wounds. They were unconsciously trying to recreate familiar patterns of emotional drama that would pull you into their orbit of dysfunction. When you refused to be drawn into their chaos, they experienced the terror of being truly alone with themselves. Most people will do anything to avoid that level of self-confrontation, including creating elaborate conflicts to distract from their inner emptiness. Every negative projection they threw at you was actually a confession of their own internal struggles. When they called you arrogant, they revealed their own insecurity about their lack of authentic confidence. When they labeled you as intimidating, they admitted their own weakness. When they accused you of being fake, they exposed their own artificial personas. You became the screen onto which they projected every quality they hate about themselves. This is the spiritual law of reflection in action. The universe uses awakened souls as mirrors to show sleeping souls what they refuse to see about their own shadow. You didn't choose this role. You simply evolved to the point where your authentic presence naturally triggers their unresolved psychological material. They hate you for the same reason vampires hate sunlight. Your truth dissolves their illusions, and they experience that dissolution as a personal attack rather than an opportunity for growth. The projection storm reached biblical proportions. They accused you of being everything they secretly feared they were: cold, calculating, superior, judgmental, heartless. Each accusation revealed another layer of their own self-loathing. They were literally confessing their sins while thinking they were exposing yours. Your mirror-like presence reflected back their unhealed wounds with surgical precision. You've become what Carl Jung called the carrier of the shadow for the collective. Your individual healing work qualified you to hold space for their unprocessed darkness. This isn't comfortable work, it's sacred work. Most people spend their entire lives avoiding their own shadow material, but chosen ones are called to face not only their own darkness, but to provide a safe container for others to confront theirs as well. The mirror effect intensified as their projections became more desperate and revealing. They accused you of lacking empathy while demonstrating complete inability to empathize with perspectives different from their own. They called you closed-minded while refusing to consider that their worldview might be flawed. They labeled you as divisive while their very reaction to your presence was creating division in the room. Trompers tompers domp, tompers 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 tomp, tompers tomp, tompers tompers tomp, 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 tompers tomp. The more frantically they tried to make you responsible for their discomfort, the more obvious it became that their discomfort was entirely self-generated. They were arguing with their own reflection and losing badly. Your stillness made their chaos look even more chaotic by contrast. Your peace made their inner turmoil unbearably obvious to everyone present. You remember when you would have reacted to their provocations. You remember when their opinions could wound you. You remember when you needed their acceptance to feel worthy. But standing in that room, observing their meltdown with complete emotional detachment, you realize how far you've traveled on your journey. The person they were trying to trigger no longer exists. You've been reborn in fire, and their water cannot extinguish your flame. This is the moment every chosen one experiences when they fully step into their power, the realization that you're no longer the victim of other people's emotional immaturity. You've become the observer of their patterns rather than the participant in their drama. You've transcended their frequency while remaining grounded in compassion for their struggle. You understand their pain because you've experienced it, but you're no longer controlled by it because you've healed it. The comparison between your current self and your former self felt like looking at two completely different people. Your old self would have been triggered into defensive reactions. Your old self would have felt responsible for their emotional comfort. Your old self would have sacrificed your truth to maintain peace. But that version of you died during your dark nights of the soul. What emerged from those ashes was something they had no reference point for understanding. The depth of your metamorphosis became apparent as you witnessed their attempts to provoke old versions of yourself that no longer existed. They were trying to push buttons that had been completely rewired. They were attempting to trigger responses that had been permanently deleted from your operating system. You felt like an adult watching children try to manipulate you with tactics that might have worked when you were also a child. Your transformation included developing what spiritual traditions call the witness consciousness. You could observe your own thoughts, emotions, and reactions without being controlled by them. This level of self-awareness created an unshakable foundation that no external circumstance could disturb. You had become the eye of the storm, completely still while chaos swirled around you. Every night you spent in solitary contemplation while they parted prepared you for this moment. Every hour you invested in self-development while they consumed entertainment created the foundation for your unshakable presence. Every moment you chose growth over comfort, truth over convenience, authenticity over acceptance, brought you to this point of spiritual maturity. Your isolation wasn't punishment, it was preparation. The universe separated you from the herd so you could develop the strength to face the herd without being contaminated by their groupthink. Your loneliness forged your independence. Your pain created your wisdom. Your struggles built your character. Now you understand why you had to walk through the valley of transformation alone. You needed to become strong enough to stand against the collective delusion without being pulled back into the trance. Your separation was actually protection disguised as punishment. Those years of feeling like an alien among humans suddenly made perfect sense. You weren't supposed to fit in because you were being prepared to stand out. Your sensitivity to fake interactions wasn't a social deficit. It was divine programming that prevented you from being corrupted by mass consciousness. Your inability to tolerate shallow conversations wasn't antisocial behavior. It was your soul protecting its frequency from contamination. The price you paid for your awakening was steep. Relationships ended. Friendships dissolved. Family members distanced themselves. Career opportunities disappeared. But every loss created space for something greater. Every ending prepared you for a new beginning. Every rejection redirected you toward your true purpose. Now you can see that what felt like cosmic punishment was actually cosmic protection, preparing you for cosmic responsibility. Your solitary journey through the dark night of the soul forged qualities that could only be developed in isolation: self-reliance, inner strength, unshakable faith in your own truth, the ability to stand alone without feeling lonely. These qualities made you immune to peer pressure, social manipulation, and collective unconsciousness. You became a lighthouse in a sea of confusion, steady and unwavering regardless of the storms around you. Those people will go home tonight and think about what happened in that room. Your words will echo in their minds during quiet moments. Your unshakable confidence will haunt their insecurities. Some will dismiss the experience and double down on their delusions, but others will begin the painful process of honest self-examination. Your presence planted seeds that will either grow into awakening or be rejected through deeper denial. This is how consciousness evolution spreads through human networks. One awakened soul enters a group of sleeping souls and disrupts their collective hypnosis. Some souls choose to wake up, others choose to sleep deeper, but none of them remain unchanged by the encounter. You've become an agent of divine disruption, breaking up the stagnant energy patterns that keep people trapped in mediocrity. Your role isn't to save everyone. Your role is to offer everyone the choice. The ripples will spread far beyond that room. Those people will go home and unconsciously process what happened. Some will have disturbing dreams that force them to confront uncomfortable truths. Others will find themselves questioning assumptions they've never examined before. A few will begin their own journey of authentic self-discovery. Most will try to forget the experience ever happened, but the seed of doubt about their false identities has been planted. Seeds have their own timing for germination. Your impact extends through dimensions most people can't perceive. Every time you stand in your truth, you strengthen the morphic field of awakened consciousness on this planet. You're contributing to a collective awakening that's been building momentum for decades. Other chosen ones around the world felt the shift when you spoke your truth in that room. Your courage gives them permission to be more courageous. Your authenticity inspires them to be more authentic. Your power activates their power. The quantum field theory suggests that consciousness affects reality at the subatomic level. Your elevated frequency in that room actually altered the vibrational signature of the space itself. The transformation you've undergone changed your electromagnetic signature, and that signature continues to influence everyone who comes into contact with it long after you've left their presence. You're literally walking around as a catalyst for evolution wherever you go. You weren't put here to be comfortable. You weren't designed to fit in. You weren't created to make everyone feel good about their choices. You're here to shatter illusions, expose deceptions, and awaken souls who are ready for truth. Your sensitivity to falsehood isn't a burden, it's your superpower. Your inability to tolerate fake interactions isn't a social deficit, it's divine programming that ensures you remain authentic in a world of pretenders. The same intensity that made you difficult to handle as a child now makes you powerful as an adult. The same qualities that got you labeled as too much, too deep, too intense are the exact qualities the world needs to break free from its collective trance. You've been forged in the fires of rejection and abandonment so you could become strong enough to stand alone when necessary. Your wounds became your wisdom, your pain became your power, your isolation became your independence. Your warrior nature isn't about aggression or violence, it's about having the courage to face truth when everyone else is running from it. It's about maintaining your integrity when everyone else is compromising theirs. It's about standing for something meaningful when everyone else is falling for anything convenient. You're a warrior of consciousness, armed with awareness and protected by truth. The battlefield you're fighting on isn't physical, it's psychological, emotional, and spiritual. The enemy isn't other people, it's the collective unconsciousness that keeps humanity trapped in cycles of suffering, deception, and mediocrity. Your weapons aren't swords or guns. They're clarity, authenticity, courage, and compassion. Your victories aren't measured in bodies defeated, but in souls awakened, illusions shattered, and truth revealed. Ancient warrior traditions understood that the greatest battles are fought within the self. You've conquered your own inner demons, faced your own shadow, and integrated your own darkness. This internal victory qualifies you to assist others in their own battles against unconsciousness. You've become what Tibetan Buddhism calls a spiritual warrior, someone who has the courage to face reality without the armor of illusion. Your warrior training included learning when to engage and when to withdraw, when to speak and when to remain silent, when to be gentle and when to be fierce. You've developed the discernment to know which approach will be most effective in any given situation. Sometimes your mere presence is enough to trigger awakening. Other times a single sentence delivered with precision creates the breakthrough someone needs. Standing in that room, watching their carefully constructed worldview crumble with a single sentence, you realized the cosmic joke. They mocked your journey. They ridiculed your dedication to growth. They called your spiritual practices weird, your boundaries harsh, your standards unrealistic. But in that moment of collective ego destruction, you became the very thing they secretly wished they could be: authentic, unshakable, free. What if the same people who laughed at your transformation now unconsciously mimic your language patterns, adopt your philosophies, and desperately try to capture your presence? They'll never admit they were wrong about you. Ego doesn't apologize. But they'll spend years trying to reverse engineer the confidence they once dismissed as arrogance. They'll study your social media for clues about your mindset. They'll copy your routines hoping to access your peace. They'll imitate your detachment while missing the depth of inner work that created it. You didn't just make them feel stupid, you made them realize they've been sleepwalking through life while you've been wide awake. You didn't attack their intelligence, you revealed their lack of authenticity. You didn't diminish their worth, you showed them what they could become if they chose courage over comfort. Your presence became a mirror reflecting their unlived potential, and they couldn't handle the glimpse of who they could have been if they hadn't given up on themselves. The divine justice isn't that you proved them wrong. The divine justice is that you became everything you were meant to be while they remained trapped in everything they've always been. Your growth became their judgment. Your transformation became their conviction. Your authenticity became their sentence to continued mediocrity, unless they choose to do the work you've already done. They'll remember this moment for years, some with resentment, others with gratitude, but all of them with the knowing that they witnessed someone who had broken free from the prison they're still choosing to inhabit. You are the proof that evolution is possible, awakening is real, and the matrix can be transcended by anyone willing to pay the price of authentic transformation. You were never meant to walk this path alone. The Obsidian Inner Order isn't just another spiritual community. It's a sanctuary for the exiled, the awakened, the ones who've been gaslit for their gifts and abandoned for their truth. Every week we gather live on Zoom, real people with real faces sharing real stories of transformation. There's a former CFO who embraced their psychic abilities, a seer who broke free from religious oppression, and a healer who survived ritual abuse and found their power. Dozens more join us who understand exactly what you've been through. This is your spiritual family, never gonna give you up, never gonna let you walk through this awakening alone, never gonna scroll past your suffering like it's just content. Your exile from the ordinary world wasn't punishment, it was preparation. For this, for us, for the family that chooses you back. Join the Obsidian Inner Order. Link in description. Your single sentence didn't make them stupid. It revealed that they've been making themselves stupid by choosing comfortable lies over uncomfortable truths. You simply held up the mirror they've been avoiding their entire lives. The reflection they saw wasn't your creation. It was their reality finally exposed to the light of honest observation. This is your calling, not to comfort the afflicted, but to afflict the comfortable, not to enable their delusions, but to shatter their illusions, not to make them feel better about their choices, but to make them question why they've been choosing unconsciousness over awareness, conformity over authenticity, safety over growth. You are the alarm clock they didn't know they needed, ringing in a room full of people who have been sleepwalking through their own lives. Some will wake up, others will hit snooze, but none will be able to claim they weren't given the opportunity to open their eyes and see clearly. The sound of their egos crashing to the floor isn't destruction, it's construction. The demolition of false identities that make space for authentic transformation. You didn't come here to destroy them. You came here to show them what they could become if they were brave enough to let their false selves die so their true selves could be born. Welcome to your purpose, chosen one. Welcome to your power. Welcome to the understanding that your very existence is a gift to humanity, even when humanity doesn't appreciate the gift. You are the catalyst that transforms carbon into diamonds, coal into fire, sleeping souls into awakened consciousness. Your work here is sacred, necessary, and divinely orchestrated. The universe conspired to create you exactly as you are for exactly this moment in history. Your sensitivity, your intensity, your refusal to conform, your commitment to truth, your willingness to stand alone, all these qualities that made you feel like an outsider are precisely what qualify you to be an insider in the cosmic plan for human evolution. Every person you've ever triggered into growth, every ego you've ever shattered with truth, every comfortable lie you've ever exposed with clarity has been preparing you for greater levels of service to the awakening of human consciousness. You're not here to be liked, you're here to be real. You're not here to be comfortable, you're here to be transformative. You're not here to blend in, you're here to stand out as a beacon of what's possible when someone chooses truth over convenience, growth over comfort, authenticity over acceptance. Keep disturbing their peace, chosen one. Their peace is actually just unconsciousness wearing a mask of contentment. Real peace comes from awakening, not from sleeping. Real joy comes from authentic living, not from comfortable lies. Real fulfillment comes from becoming who you actually are, not from pretending to be who others want you to be. You are exactly who you're supposed to be, exactly when you're supposed to be it. Trust the process, trust your purpose, trust your power. The universe doesn't make mistakes, and you are definitely not a mistake. You are a masterpiece designed for maximum impact in minimum time. Use your power wisely, but use it boldly. The world is waiting for your unique contribution to the Great Awakening. This is your graduation day, chosen one. You've earned your spiritual doctorate in authentic living. Now go forth and disturb the peace of sleeping souls with the loving violence of truth. The world needs your medicine, even when it tastes bitter, especially when it tastes bitter. Because sometimes the greatest gift you can give someone is the discomfort that finally motivates them to change their life.